together. I don't really have a lot in the way of announcements. Again, I just appreciate the efforts you're putting into it. And the small groups, just encourage in the small groups to be open. It can be a real blessing to yourself and also, of course, everyone else that's attending in the small group. I appreciate your participation. We want to make it a safe place to be able to share. So at this time, we're going to have Randall Wenger with us this morning. And if he can just come forward, we'll have a word of prayer. Song first. Sorry. Doug, if you could do the song. Great. Thank you, Doug. Randall, you can come forward. I consider Randall a true friend. Been working with him with Encourage Men in the last few years. Has a real passion for the Encourage Young Men program and puts a lot of energy into that. That will be starting after the New Year, probably the first Thursday night after New Year, something like that. Second Thursday night after New Year's at Hinkletown Mennonite Church. It is a Encourage Young Men. If you're not familiar with that, you can see one of us as a committee, but it's designed for father and son type thing. Really a neat opportunity to share with, if you have sons that are 15 years old or older, welcome to attend there as well. So, all right, let's pray. Dear Father, we come before you this morning. We just thank you again. Thank you again for each of the men that came out here this morning. Thank you for just allowing us to have the Encourage Men meetings that we have. And more importantly, Lord, that we can just be giving you all the honor and glory, and that we can just be furthering your kingdom as the idea. And Lord, just help us that we can just keep that vision, keep that focus on everyone that's attending. We just pray for Randall this morning as he shares with us. We just pray that you can just open his heart, give him words to speak. And we just pray for all of us as well, that we can just be open and that we can drink in the words that you have to share for us this morning. We just pray again for each man that's here this morning and the journey they may be on. We just pray you can touch them in a special way and be with them throughout the upcoming days, weeks. And we just pray that you can just go with each of us today, that we can be a shining light in wherever we find ourselves today, that we can be just pointing people towards you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Bruno. And I would like to return that blessing. You've been a great friend as well, and probably some of the reason I've been here this morning. So good morning, everyone. I do not like talking to strangers, so I hopefully we can become a little more friends as we go along. In studying for this topic this morning, I was listening to multiple different people. I love digging around, seeing what other people have to say on the topics I'm talking about. That is the title cover there. Simon Sinek. Anybody ever hear of Simon Sinek? He's kind of one of the popular speakers in the corporate world today. All right, very good. He is not a professing Christian, but I find it very fascinating how often he says things that you could pull right out of the Bible. He often comes to very similar conclusions. I would love to sit down with him sometime and ask him why he doesn't believe in God, or why he hasn't made a commitment to Jesus. It'd be an interesting discussion, I think. Anyway, very recently, he and another fellow, Trevor Noah, I do not know Trevor Noah very well, sat down and had a discussion at some big corporate summit on the idea of friendship, loneliness, vulnerability, and I forget what the fourth word was now. And this was just kind of an impromptu discussion. And we'll be pulling a couple things out during the topic today from that. But that inspired me to look up another one on Simon, where somebody asked him, right now his big thing is kind of figuring out this thing of why people are so lonely. And some people, and while they're in this podcast, somebody asked him, Simon, what's your definition of loneliness? Before I share that with you, I don't know how many people are here this morning. Maybe it's 80, maybe it's 100, maybe it's 110. Could anybody be lonely this morning? We have 110 men here. You're not alone, are you? Physically. But somebody said you think, yes, you could be lonely, right? So here's what Simon said is his definition of loneliness, and it really struck me. He said, I feel alone when I'm with somebody or I'm with a crowd of people and I'm trying to communicate something to them and they just don't get it. And he said, we continue the conversation and he said, they just aren't getting it and I just don't feel understood. He said, after a while, you just feel alone. Like they don't get me and I can't get them. Like we just can't connect. Does that make sense? So is it possible to be in a group of 1,000 people and to be lonely? And when we start that cycle, what do we often do? We withdraw, right? We step away. And we become more alone, right? And so we withdraw even further. It is a crazy cycle. And that one about when I don't feel like I can connect with others and when I don't feel like they're understanding me, that's when we begin to feel that loneliness. And I was like, wow, I don't know. That was just powerful, it really connected with me. As I studied this session, I realized that somebody could have written this session somewhat based on portions of my life. So this morning, it may be somewhat almost a personal story throughout, but so it might be kind of just a personal story this morning. I know there's a lot of different stories that could be shared, but so you can open up your books, and we'll be going through that sheet there, but the three significant relationships, when I think of the loneliness, the all alone wound, the earlier wounds we've been talking about so far, the father wound, the mother wound, all these others that are in the book, we skipped a few of them, but they're all wounds that come from somebody outside of us, a loss or else an injury we incurred from somebody else. The all alone wound tends to be a lot more something where we bring this on ourselves. We make a choice to step away from people. And we might disagree with that, but let's go through this course and we'll see what you think. So 3 of the significant relationships we need in life. The first one is an admiring mentor. Where my loneliness journey in life, I would say, started was as a preteen, young teenager. When I got into some stuff that was some significant sexual stuff in my own life. And through that experience, it brought a ton of shame into my life and an identity that I'm different from other people. And there's just some things about my life that I just hope nobody ever finds out. Because if people find out, they're definitely going to move away from me. And I'm going to definitely be labeled as a black sheep or an outcast. Can anybody identify? Yeah, okay. So I'm not alone. Thank you. And we're not alone in this, brothers. This is such a tactic of Satan. It is so real. And I did not realize I internalized that. I'm not exactly sure when it first really hit me. Probably was through the encouragement meetings, I think, is when I really started to be able to unpack that. So here I come, young teenager, getting into my early teens, got into youth group at church and stuff. And at that age of my life, I remember being on a canoe trip when I was 18 years old. And this is why I think I love the outdoors today. We were canoeing up in the Adirondacks for a 5-day trip. Wendell Zizet, some of you may know him, married to Karen Musser. They live out in central Pennsylvania today. He had finished up a 2-year term at Bald Eagle Boys Camp. He came back, and he took a bunch of us guys out on a canoe trip, along with, there was a Mike Root, I think there's several others, that'd be your Uncle Curtis, several other men as well. Anyway, took about 5 of us, I think it was 5 of us guys, who were like 17, 18 years old. Went up there for a 5-day trip. On Sunday of that trip, well, actually that trip was pretty impactful in a lot of ways. I had recently been dating as a young teenager, probably too young. That's probably half the problem. But anyway, and that relationship came to an end, and it was been very big to me because this was another thing in my life now. So now as an early teenager, I had this black spot in my life, and now I break up, and I'm like, where's my life going? My life is shattered to me. This is the end of the rope. There's no future. Okay, this canoe trip sounds like a great thing. I'm going to go along, never realizing what was going to happen. On that canoe trip, had some great conversations with some of the guys, but that Sunday was very, very significant. We did not canoe on Sunday. We stayed at the campsite, and we were just hanging out there. We had done some time alone in the afternoon. Anyway, I was coming back from that, and there was a waterfall right above our campsite, about 10, 12 feet high. And we were to jump across. The creek was pretty wide down below, so we were just crossing right above there. And actually what made that waterfall was some massive rocks. And they came together, formed a channel, and the water kind of went down across there. And when I went to cross the stream, I apparently didn't give a hard enough jump, or I'm not sure what, but I landed in the stream about 2 or 3 feet short of the bank there, and it was just a big slippery rock. And all of a sudden I realized, I'm not getting out of here. I'm sliding down in. And there was nobody around. I was alone because we had all been out in the woods alone. I was coming back alone. And I realized at that moment that I don't think I'm going to get stopped before the waterfall because it's only 5 feet away. And I remember this going through my head, and that's about the last thing I remember before I was down across the falls. But yeah, it sucked me right in. It was a slippery rock, and I just slid right down in. I remember feeling stupid about that. But anyway, that's another whole topic in itself. So slide down in the river, and I go floating down across right over the dam. And I knew there was a big rock sticking out partway down. I never hit it. I don't know why. Thank God. Dropped down in the dam, underneath the water in the big pool. There was kind of a rock coming out, made a hole. That rock was probably about 8 feet away. Made this deep hole, pushed me down to the bottom. I remember pushing off the bottom, breaking, getting a breath. And I thought I yelled. Nobody's ever heard me, they say. It went down again. I came up. I don't think I could break the surface a second time with my head, but my hands got above the water. And I remember the third time coming up, I'm not sure if I broke the surface at all. And that's the last I remember until they pulled me out. So I don't know how much time actually passed between there. I realized there's enough of time that I don't think I was maybe with it the whole time, but I'm not sure. But one of the guys saw my hand sticking out of the water. and they were running down, made a human chain that they used that rock that went out into the pool. It wasn't just a huge churning pool, but it was enough to keep me that I couldn't surface. And grabbed me, pulled me out, and that's kind of a vulnerable spot to be, isn't it? You just feel stupid because you didn't jump across the creek, right? Anybody can jump across the creek, can't they? You feel really stupid at a time like that. You're 7-8 miles in the wilderness. You're putting everybody's life in danger. I did. I felt really stupid. And you remember the emotional place in life where I was at the moment. My life was kind of falling apart. And I just remember Wendell taking me over, and he's like, hey, let's go over by the fire or whatever. Let's get you dried off. I mean, I was in clothes that were fine if I got wet. There wasn't anything real mattered. And I was sitting down there relaxing, and later on it's like, hey, why don't you go out in the water and get swimming a little bit? He's like, you're never going to swim again if you don't. So I did that and got, I was half freaked, but I was like, yeah, you're probably right, Wendell. So I went down and swam around the stream on the bottom part, a little calm. And everybody was fine, respectful, and come back, sitting around the fire, and he just said, Randall, so I just be careful. He's like, we're several miles out here. There's nobody around. And he's like, we don't got a way of connecting with anybody. I was like, yeah, you're right, Wendell. I need to be careful. The respect, I never got chewed out, never got trashed down. And the way they came around me just to make sure in that moment, I felt it. The words actually aren't that big in a way, but the respect, the love I felt, Wendell was an admiring mentor to me. He respected me. He saw something in me. When I turned 21, I went to boys camp. I figured if boys camp makes you like Wendell's eyes, I want to go to boys camp. Didn't quite work that way for me, but anyway, it definitely helped, I believe. But that story is just an impact to me. I was a lonely guy, and I had somebody come into my life right then, an admiring mentor type of person who broke that chain. You see how that worked for me? That broke that chain. These are some of the significant relationships we need. So moving on to B, the side-by-side friend. An admiring mentor is somebody who will often be a bit older than you. Somebody who maybe won't necessarily ever be a best friend. He's more of somewhat of a father figure who's not your father, if you want to say it that way. But the side-by-side friend, this needs to be someone like a brother, someone who's close to your age, someone who you can just, you live and share life with. I would say this is something that I had longed for over the years, and really looked forward to finding somebody like that. I found friends like that at boys camp with the staff team there, and throughout teaching school, taught school for about 5 years of my life, found folks there. But my small groups that encourage men, and I think it encourage young men, has been some of the places where I would say I found some men who really, really were men who finally, I'll say it this way, I always had a part of my life that I kind of kept to myself, right? You don't really like talking about, even people you get to know really well. And I never was really able to conquer that whole sense of loneliness until I was really able to connect deep enough with some people that they really got to know everything about me. And that relationship didn't happen until we spent a bit of time together. And as I realized studying for this, I was like, you know what? As much as I don't think I'm a lonely person, people say, Randall, you have tons of friends. Everywhere you go, everybody knows you. I'm in a flying club up a deck, and every time somebody puts a new application in, we're adding people, the club's about full now. And they're like, Randall, do you know this person? And I did every single time. They're like, yeah, just ask Randall. He knows everybody. But the thing is, I know a lot of people, but the question was, how many people actually know me? How many people know you? And it wasn't until I opened up that door and left people in my life. Loneliness is a choice, brothers. Loneliness is a choice. I know it might be hard to accept. And if you've been burnt by relationships, it's very painful. But remember, guys, loneliness is actually a choice. Toward the end of it, I want to bring up some of my friends I made here at Encourage Men. And we might have a little bit of discussion. I'd love to share a little bit more personally what some of those men have meant to me. The needy protege. I'm still not sure if I'm saying that word right, Junior. Thank you for helping me get that figured out. I think it's protege. If I'm saying it wrong, forgive me. Last week, how many of you were at the Anabaptist financial meetings? Some of you were there? All right. Keith Burkholder has become a good friend of mine, kind of becoming and filling that role of an admiring mentor. Really, man, I've really learned to appreciate. He shared a story there, or he shared some statistics there about life satisfaction and how it tends to go down and down and down to hits the lowest point in about our 40s in life, like between 40 and 50. Also looked at the use of antidepressants and seeing that curve. Actually, the most likelihood of using antidepressants is in your 40s as well. And as he dug into that, as he shared, he said what it looks like is often in our 20s, we are too scared to ask for help. In our 30s, we feel the need for independence, so we don't ask for help. And in our 40s, we're too proud to admit we don't have it figured out, that we just keep striking it alone. And by then, it's pretty hard. And after that, I guess we just give up and realize we're never going to have this thing figured out. And we just start going golfing and hunting and fishing and everything else more and live life happily ever after. I don't know what happens, why it gets better after 40. But anyway, it does. But it doesn't need to be that way. It doesn't need to be that way. You don't have to go life alone. And if you're at the AF thing, Keith was talking about bringing other people in as an outside perspective. And why do I bring all that up? Because when we get older, did you ever hear that thing of when men retire, they die? You ever hear about that thing? When men quit their job, they die. Well, maybe not exactly, but they kind of just fade away. Why is that? I think God created there's basically different phases of our life. Like right now, yeah, I can maybe fill the role to somewhat of an admiring mentor to a young teenager, and I'm happy to. But for the most point, my phase of life right now is B, side-by-side friend. That's where I'm at. I'm not old enough yet to really have been in a place where I can significantly fill that role, the admiring mentor. But some of you are. And this is where, brothers, as we get a hold of this thing of brotherhood, I think, we see these different places. When we're young, we welcome that input. And as we get older, the gifts, the blessing that God gave us, he expects us to start sharing with brothers. And as we get older, to share with younger people, to give them the opportunity to do life well. We're going to have to keep going. We'll run out of time before we're out of slides. The all-alone wound is a social, emotional, and spiritual loss caused by the lack of healthy male comradeship that results in loneliness and discouragement, foolish behaviors and discouragement, short-sighted masculinity. There's a whole bunch for you to fill in there. I'll just take a couple minutes here. And I think if we look around in our communities, like to say, yeah, we see that out there. But today, brothers, I'm not really talking to people out there. We're talking to each other, right? We're part of the Anabaptist community here. And I don't know why it seems this way, but I don't know that I've ever talked to too many young people who said, yeah, I just got a lot of men in my life that I'm really connected with, and if I ever got questions, I just go talk to them. Don't often talk to a lot of guys like that. I talk to a lot of people who are like, I just wish I had somebody I could go and sit down with and talk to. And so I've wrestled with, where does this wound actually come from? Where does this start? Why do people learn to be all alone? I think some of it is just, as men, we're naturally alone. We tend to try to keep life looking good. We don't want people too close. So we just try to keep them at arm's length. So I think it's some of a natural result. I went pretty fast there. I see a lot of people still writing yet. That's good. You're all right. Yeah, I don't know exactly what it all is in our culture that causes these things, but we'll dig into some of the things more. But I think we would be surprised how much the whole loneliness thing is actually an issue. I'm not really involved in the whole mental health world a whole lot, but in studying into this, I ran into a few people who say that loneliness is, I know where I was going with that. Somebody was studying in on homeless people, and the more they dug into the whole thing, trying to figure out common causes, one of the things they finally came back to is the one question is, who in your life expects you to be somebody? And that was the question they got the most consistent answer on. And for homeless men, it was nobody. And for men who came out of homelessness and were actually able to live a successful, productive life, the most common factor was they found friends that helped them walk that journey. Loneliness is powerful. So what's the point of this whole thing? Every man benefits from the company of other men. But do we just benefit from the company of each other? I think we realize it does go deeper than that, right? Because we're in the company of other men this morning, but we may leave and still be lonely, right? The data indicates that even the most intimate of male friendships, of which there are few, rarely approach the depth of disclosure a woman commonly has with other women. Men neither bear themselves or bear with one another. Men who neither bear themselves or bear with one another are buddies in name only. As Simon and Sinek and Trevor Noah were discussing that topic, interview I watched here, just posted on YouTube, I think about 2 weeks ago now. If you want to look it up, just search Simon Sinek, Trevor Noah, Friendship and Loneliness, and I'm sure it'll pop right up for you. One of the things they were talking in there, and Trevor was saying this to the crowd, he said, I've been talking to you this weekend, and he said, a bunch of you are like Fortune 500 companies, you're doing really, really well. And he said, when I asked you how your friend's doing, some of you are telling me, well, I didn't talk to them for a while. It's been several months since we got together. Or, yeah, I don't know, I gotten busy, and I just don't really have time for my friends anymore. He said, people, do you understand what's going on? Those really aren't friends. They're just acquaintances. I don't think he used those exact words, but they're like acquaintances. You're just buddies, or in a word. You're not really friends. And basically, where we're going with this word, what do we mean by friends? Think about it this way. If you're really down and out, how many people, if you're discouraged to the point that you almost feel like life ain't hardly worth going anymore, or like you feel like you just blown it big and you don't want anybody to know about it, how many men do you have? Let's just say you feel like suicide. Or something just really bad, something that you don't want to talk to many people about. I guess is where I'm trying to go with this. How many men in your life do you feel are safe enough that you could pick up the phone and call or go and meet? Now, that's a hard question. When you take it to that level, we can have friends we go and do stuff with, go hunting with, go out for breakfast with and stuff. But when I ask the question to myself, how many men would I have that I'd be willing to let them know everything about my life, especially if it really fell apart? That's a hard question. And I guess that's, as I was thinking through it and listening to some of these other topics, it's like, but isn't that the question? Isn't that the point? When we have those deep friendships, that's what breaks that loneliness cycle. That's how we start moving in to places where men can be mentors, brothers, needed protege to us, and can really help start bringing about change in our lives. Because otherwise, they're just buddies. We do stuff with each other, and we don't know anything about each other. Actually, a fascinating thing, today's young people, they're connecting more around what drives them as far as anger. They're angry that we're not doing more to save the world. You see young people gluing themselves to buildings and stuff. Do they really love each other? Do you think they have deep heart connections with each other? They're all glued to the door because we're not doing enough to save the climate. These young people since they're not connecting around deep friendships or they're really helping each other become the best they can be, they're connecting around their anger. They're longing for that connection. But since they don't find it in safe personal relationships, they're finding it in areas that they're angry about. You think you see this in church sometimes? Randall, don't say things like that. I wonder sometimes if we do, friends. When we don't have deep, meaningful connections, it's actually easier to connect around things that make us angry. Yeah, you're upset about that. You don't like what the preacher said on Sunday? Yeah, I don't either. He's kind of weird. You can feel a sense of connection. We have something in common we agree on. But are we really building relationships that are helping each other grow and become everything God created us to be? I don't think so. Let's move on. Significant downsides when we're dealing with the all alone wound. We get a warped perspective on life. There's a way that seems right to a man, but the way they're in is death. I'll leave that slide back up for you. Don't we see this though? When we get alone, when we're doing life alone, some of you travel for business. I get out of town sometimes for business trips, spend time alone. And isn't it fascinating how when we're out of town, when we're by ourselves, how we're tempted with things that we would never be tempted with when we're in a group of people that we care about, that we let know each other. And I would say this is actually one of the places where my small group was very impactful in my life. I finally started telling them, look guys, Sometimes I'm out of town. Here's the things I'm tempted with way more. I'm going out of town this weekend, and I'm going to tell you how it went when I get back. And that was huge. That was huge for me. Yeah, it's incredible. And we see the stories right now. I'm not here to beat up on Ravi Zacharias, but you see his life, right? That man had a tremendous ministry, but I don't know where it went sideways, but somewhere along the line, he had a warped perspective on life that he could do these things and live a double life or whatever. I don't know what his motivations were. He passed away before he could answer the questions. But just remember, when we're living alone, brothers, it's very easy to start having a way that seems right to us. We justify it to ourselves, but the end is death. Number 2, loose living is tied right in there, but when we're alone, brothers, we'll do way more. We're much more likely to check out that porn site, that whatever, if we're sure nobody's ever gonna find out about it. It's just a reality. When we are alone, he who separates himself seeks his own desire. He quarrels against all sound wisdom. Just remember, the lions, when they're going to find a prey, they generally don't try to attack the whole herd. But if they find that one alone, that's who they'll seek out, right? And so just remember, when we make ourselves alone, we make ourselves vulnerable to Satan. Loss of motivation for the noble things in life. This is an interesting one. As men, we have big dreams. We think we're going to go many places. We're going to accomplish big things. But you know what? It's very difficult to do it alone. And we lose motivation. And we settle in for just mediocrity. And I think that's an amazing part of small group. We challenge each other to go do the hard things. Last week, Curtis talks about going back and talking to dad or just making things right with dad. Maybe you can't go back and talk to dad. Maybe it's not safe. Maybe he's no longer here or something. But we challenge each other when we're in that group setting, when we have friends, to go for the noble things in life. Go talk to your wife about that. I'm not married, so I can say anything, tell you all the things you need to do for your marriage. And I don't have to do anything. But as friends, we challenge each other and we help each other to grow. And I just think, yeah, definitely this is one of the huge downsides of being alone. Male cheerleaders, having brothers who are in your life to just challenge you on, to help you to grow. It's all about basically that same thing there. If you don't have men in your life to help you on, brothers, it is a hard road. It is a hard road. Nobody was ever designed to go it alone. Do you know what Jesus did? What did Jesus do when life got really hard? He prayed often, right? Took time, spent time with God. I find that very fascinating. The angels came and communed with him different times of his life. That was his father, right? Who was Jesus' cheerleader? Who? Huh? God. Think of his baptism. And God just spoke into his son. God was his cheerleader. If you want to think about it that way. God was the one who had his back. God was the one who said, son, you're doing well. I'm proud of you. Keep on. You're accomplishing the mission I sent you for. Male cheerleaders. You might be married, or you might be a single guy like me and think if you're married someday, your wife could just fix all your problems. I'm sure she would. Anyways, that's why you married guys just have it all perfect. Anyway, we'll drop that conversation. Your wife can't do some of these things for you, brothers. Ladies cannot call us out. And single young men, your mothers can't do this for you, okay? As much as your mother wants to help you become everything you can be, she can't. You need men. One of the interesting things is men who often feel lonely are much more likely to connect with women in their life than other men. So if you find it easier to build relationships with other ladies, don't excuse yourself. You weren't created that way. You were created to connect with men and women. But if you find it scary to connect with men, I would say push into that. I would encourage you to push into that because there's something there. It's not that it's wrong, but we need men to help us be men. I heard it said this way. Jason, I think, said it here one time. He said, a mother gives birth to a son. A father gives birth to a man. Make sense? A mother gives birth to a son, but a father gives birth to a man. Loss of opportunities for much needed transparency. Iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. We're back to that same theme, brothers. If we don't have men in our lives, we're probably going to stay where we are. If it wouldn't have been for the men in my life, I definitely would never have become who I am today. I know that. I would never be here speaking if it probably wasn't for Jason Reed. Challenging me there. Randall, you should take a couple of these topics. Randall, you should take a couple of these topics. No, Jason. No, Jason. No, Jason. Anyway, there's some stories that we get down there. But Jason believed in me enough that he didn't give up. And he said, Randall, just try it. I think you can do it. I'm ever grateful for what he did for me there. Be a lot more stories, but let's keep going. There is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. Two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. We're going to, for the sake of time, we'll keep going. I'd like to have you out by 6:30. A friend loves at all time, and a brother is born for adversity. And let us consider who to stimulate one another to love and good deeds. I think we think of stimulating each other sometimes. We're not always sure. Yeah, sometimes we stir each other up in wrong ways. But I think, can we think about that? How can I help my friends become more than they are? How can I challenge them to love, to good deeds, to grow, to step into those roles? You know, brothers, we all think we don't have it as a man, but we don't want anybody else to know that, right? Isn't that true? None of us think we have it together. None of us think that we can really make it in life. We really aren't what you are. I really don't have what you have as a man, but I'm certainly not going to let you know. Is that true? I mean, that's the way I find it. It's like we all have that insecurity. I don't think we're ever going to get away from that. It's just kind of just a human thing from the curse, I believe, is all men feel inferior. So if you're a young fella, I had the opportunity, the middle of September, we did a youth canoe trip. Spent 3 days on the river with a bunch of teenagers, a bunch of 17-year-olds, and I had just turned 34, so I was double their age. That was a good time. But anyway, you shouldn't do that when you're double somebody's age and go on a canoe trip with them because they wear you out. But anyway, it was a good time. But just hanging out with them and seeing their energy and seeing them, like I think they would say we inspired them, but it was something amazing that happened. Like seeing their passion for Jesus, seeing their willingness to say, we want to have good, clean, healthy fun. This is why we wanted to go on a canoe trip. This is why I wanted to spend this time together. This is why we wanted to sit around the campfire and have good conversations. This is why we wanted to go paddle down the river and, try to kill copperheads that we see and stuff like that. And we actually did a couple of that. Maybe I shouldn't tell stories like that. Nobody's going to go on canoe trips now. But anyway, we just had a good time. And it was interesting coming off that trip. There was something I didn't know until we were all done. And there was a young man on that trip that his dad made some pretty hard choices. And he's dealing with the consequences of that right now. And he hasn't had a lot of contact with his dad because of that. And coming off that trip, I was just shocked. I didn't know anything about this going into this. And I had a couple minutes to chat with him after the trip, and he said, I was really, really down before this trip. And he was a man of few words, but he just said, I've been encouraged. He said, I'm going to try to do life better going forward. I was like, thank you, Jesus. I had no idea this young man was here, 17 years old, trying to figure out what do I do when dad doesn't do life well. I was like, God, this definitely wasn't us. It's something you did. A couple of his friends texted me later and said, thank you so much for doing that trip. This young fellow, we're just amazed. He's finally talking. He was just clammed up by himself. I was like, wow. It's amazing. Things happen. Brothers, when you allow yourself to be used, to be out there, to be available, it's amazing what God does with our lives. Don't ever let Satan tell you that you are less than anybody else, because we're all equal, brothers. God created us all equal. Hold on to that. Jonathan loved David as his own life, 1 Samuel 20:17. This is an interesting one. This is some men who accepted where God had called them to be. Jonathan should have been the next king, but David was. And Jonathan accepted that. And they became best friends. Can you imagine that? The jealousy that Jonathan could have had? The fear and insecurity that David could have had? David had every reason to be a very insecure person. When they came to anoint him as king, he wasn't even considered a part of the family. I don't think David was necessarily looked up to very highly. So you know that guy in your youth group or your brother in your family that you just kind of always looked down on? I think that was David. I think that was David. I don't think David got where he got in life because he was respected, some handsome, successful person who was the top player in everything he did. I don't think so. But that relationship is just so key. If we can gather and capture that relationship that Jonathan and David had, that's incredible. All right, we need to wrap up here in a little bit. 3 keys to friendship. Loyalty. Loyalty. If you want your friendships to be deep, we try to meet. Our Encourage Men group tries to meet once a month and have a good, meaningful time. And in between there, we have a group chat. If something comes up, somebody wants to share, we send it around. I tell you, it has been incredible, but it demands loyalty. You got to make time for it, and you got to be available. Faithfulness to our values. So we may have different values, or maybe different places that we are, and maybe various churches, we have different values and things like that. That's one way we can look at this. The other one is faithfulness to our values as being confidential, being someone who's trustworthy, somebody who's sincere, somebody who's going to be honest. But we have to be faithful to that relationship in confidentiality and just being transparent and open if it's actually going to be meaningful. Encouragement. If you want to have deep friends, be a source of encouragement for them. Challenge them to become everything they're able to be. You know, I often wonder what Jonathan and David's conversations are like. Was Jonathan encouraging David to go and to be that man that God had called him to be? I don't know. But there was something in that relationship that was incredible and really seemed to help David reach who he was created to be. Reach out to other men. So what are some other things we can do to combat loneliness? Reach out to other men. Challenge men you like to meet regularly with you to get better. So earlier we were talking about the whole loneliness thing. And we were talking about, how it's a thing we bring on ourselves. So here's where the challenge comes in, brothers. If you're feeling like you don't have men in life who you can really trust, I would say if you can find somebody in your small group to start with, that's a great place. If not, try to find someone in your life somewhere. And maybe start out with, if it's an older man that you trust, just ask him, can we meet for breakfast? Can we do this on a regular thing? I want someone to help me figure out my life. I want someone to help me become what God created me to be. Regularly and to get better. This isn't just to sit around and talk football. Who's your favorite team? All right? How can we help each other become better? And you know what? I did forget to say that, but like the canoe trip thing, we were having so much fun. And when you have a relationship that's more like brothers, it's great to do things and just have fun together. It isn't like we sit down with a coffee in each hand and we're like, okay, just tell me all your problems this week. Men don't often do well with that. But you know what really makes men talk, what I find in life, is campfires. I don't know what the magic of a campfire is, but men will say things around a campfire they won't say anywhere else. So I don't know why everybody goes out for breakfast, but anyway, I do too. You should start going to Cracker Barrel in the middle of winter when the campfire just cracked on the way there. Anyway, but there's something about a campfire. I spent 2 years at Boys Camp as a chief, and the campfires are incredible. Like, campfires are so therapeutic. Somebody should do a scientific study on that. But anyway, we need to keep going. Get real and share your heart. Be vulnerable. If you want your friendships to be impactful in your life, brothers, what you open up and allow other people to see is where they can help you. If they don't know, sure, you said that, Brunel, but you can't, what was it about seeing? You can't free if you don't see. Yep, thank you. Can't free if you don't see. That was really good. I appreciated that. Enjoy life together. Enjoy life together. You know, I think I feel like that's one of the things. Our small groups talked about doing a canoe trip together. We never did yet. I really hope someday we get it pulled off. Even if it's just for one night and 10 miles on a river, that is fine. William Shakespeare makes this line, we few, we happy few, we band of brothers. And Junior, if you'd come up here, I'd like to introduce some of you to some of my band of brothers. Austin, would you come up too? They actually gave us mics. Is this on? Is this on? Yeah. I did not prep you guys for this, and you know that. I did not prep you at all. Thanks for coming up. Is there anybody else from our small group here this morning? No, I was thinking it was only you two guys. Austin and I are leading a group together this year. Junior has made a commitment to his wife that he has enough going and he's not going to come this year. So Junior and I got to be the group leaders for the last several years. The reason I call these guys up is this is part of my band of brothers right here. These are some of the men. How long have we been in a small group together? Well, not this year, but it was at least, was it 4 years? Three years that we were all together? I think it was 3 different sessions of encouragement. And these brothers have helped me to get to a place where I still remember one time, Austin, we were sitting around the table for breakfast, and you said, Randall, I forget exactly how you raised that question, but you spoke into something in my life that I would say I was fairly blinded by. I had deceived myself into thinking what I was doing was okay, and I didn't realize how it was actually affecting me in very negative ways. And Austin is several years my junior, but he is a brother to me. He was able to just call me out, and he just said, Randall, what about that? I was like, Austin, what about that? And that was, I know, one of the things that really helped me break a chain in my life. So thank you so much, Austin. Really appreciate you. Junior and I worked together about this close. There's a wall between us with a sliding window, and my desk's on this side, his is on that side. Derek Weaver is my manager. Do you mind standing up, Derek? So I'm really calling out a bunch of people. Thank you, Derek. Derek has been very gracious, I think, sometimes with Junior and I, because I'm sure there's times we had unproductive time for the company while we had productive time for our relationship. And Junior's seen me at my best, and I think just about seen me at my worst. And I would say, Junior, because of you and that relationship, I've been able to feel comfort enough to be vulnerable to share some things that were meaningful. So thank you so much. It's great to have you as a friend and brothers. So thank you guys. If you want to say anything, the mics are yours. You're welcome to, but you can go back to your seat too. Thank you guys. Yep. Guys, it's worth being vulnerable. It's worth, I didn't know where they were going to go with that. I was feeling a little nervous, but anyway, I felt safe too. But having a band of brothers, gentlemen, is life-changing. And yeah. And I think actually one of the best places, if you can do it, is with a coworker, because a lot of times you spend the most time in your life with your coworkers. If you can find somebody at your job, actually, that, like Junior and I, that relationship has been huge. See each other every day. We see each other at our best and our worst. And for me, I know that was life-changing. It was. And I don't know what the impact was on those two men from my life, but anyway, now they want the mics to talk. Now you don't have them. Anyway, thank you for coming out. I did have a picture I did want to share with you yet from that canoe trip. So we came back and we got one last photo, and those photos to me are priceless. A bunch of men, arm in arm. We just grabbed a photo quick there in front of the canoe trailer. That trip was amazing. We made great memories at great times, and we came back and we could stand arm in arm. We're all equal. We're all brothers. We're all on a journey. We're all at different places in life. But the thing is, we all care about each other. And we had some great times on that trip. We'll close with a word of prayer, and then we'll go to small group. Father God, just thank you so much for this group of men that we're able to get together with on Tuesday mornings, Lord. And thank you for the opportunity for just to have these encouragement meetings. Lord, it's so easy as men to be lonely, Lord, just to try to do life alone because it's so scary to try to be vulnerable, open up our hearts to other people. But Father, just pray, can you help us to see, can you open up our eyes to see that that's such a deceit and that's such a lie from Satan. And Father, you created us for relationships. There's so many times in the Bible that you call us to come unto you. You're seeking us, Father. You want that relationship with us. And you want us to have a relationship with other fellow believers in the world. Father, whether we're in a place we need to reach out, whether we're in a place we need to make ourselves available, help us just to be open, Lord, to those relationships and to pursue them with genuine sincerity. And help us to be safe people, Father. Help us to learn how to have real friends. And Lord, that they can help us to become everything you created us to be, that we can reach our potential, Father, that you put into us. So, Father, I'm just so grateful. Thank you for the mentors, the brothers in my life. Thank you, Father, for sending them to me. And I just pray, Lord, that you would touch the hearts of men, lead them to people that they can build friendships with, that can help them to become everything you created them to be. Fathers, pray with them as they go to small group. Bless them as they share. Pray you be with them this morning. Pray this all in your name, Lord.